We're back, and of course, we're discussing the issue related to the counties and what's happening in Narok. And before the break, Jared was talking about the billions of the Mara, and probably we can take it up from that point.
Yeah, well, basically, by dint of the Constitution, the senator is legitimately mandated to look into the affairs of his county as an oversight role. So when he fails to be accorded this opportunity by Governor Tunai, he has a legitimate concern. And as I said, issues such as clanism are also playing out. But the most big thing is that people are not getting a fair share, legitimately or otherwise, that they perceive tonight to be enjoying. But this is what I proposed then, and people did not listen to me carefully. The devolution that we have ought to have been what we call asymmetrical devolution, where if there is a county that is not performing to the expectation of the electorate, it is automatically acquired back by the national government. That was the only remedy that was going to put lots of checks and balances on the managerial affairs of these counties. Today, even if a governor does engage in impropriety, and probably members of county assembly impeach him, and we have seen a few, and the matter goes before the Senate. From the Senate, it goes to court, and the court has several tiers from High Court to Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. I mean, we have seen governors who have faced the wrath, but they still stay in office. So there wasn't a very well structured system of accountability of these governors.
Exactly. And also the fact that mechanisms related to dispute resolutions are also lacking in law as far as relationship between MCAs, governors, even members of parliament, and even senators. And this, I don't know, according to your opinion, but with all this mess going around at the counties, still right now there's a suggestion, actually a ruling, that CDF should go to the counties. Are we literally jumping from the frying pan now into the fire? Simekha, starting with you.
But perhaps it's just first to look at the principle, why the court has made that decision. Because I think a lot of people who are making noise, particularly MPs, are not looking at the principle. And the principle, I believe, to the best of my knowledge, is that any funds that you would want to call devolved funds ought to be managed at the level of the county, because we have two levels of government, the county government and the national government. So either we have national government funds or county government funds, but not national government devolved funds, if you see what I mean.
Yes, I do.
CDF has not been abolished. Just that the act, CDF as currently constituted, is against the Constitution. That's what I know that the court decided. The court did not say that we are doing away with CDF, that throw it out of the door. The court said align it to conform to constitutional provisions. So because it's a devolved fund, then naturally it ought to be managed at the county level. However, from I think what the issues you are raising,
yes,
we have serious, seemingly capacity and ethical and whatnot issues at the county level,
counties,
integrity
exactly,
issues at the county level.
Right.
So I think people are rightfully worried that, goodness, you want to give these people more money, given what we are seeing them doing with the money they have. I think we need to look at the system we are trying to build and look at the people who are there currently as just as a face that we actually ought to get rid of as quickly as possible, as soon as we have an opportunity, so that we don't throw away the baby, as they say, with the dirty bath water. That we acknowledge the fact that I think in many counties we made a mistake not realizing the importance of county governments, allowing all manner of people to run for MCAs, people without any competence,
exactly,
to run as MCAs, and that they're in control of huge funds. And all they know, with huge appetites, is about eating. They are unable to play their oversight role effectively over county governments, hence what is happening in Narok, for example, because ideally you would expect the Narok County Assembly would be the first stop. They would be the ones questioning and wanting to ensure that the executive is acting in accordance with the law, in accordance with the priorities of the citizens of Narok. And the same argument goes for all other counties. But because of the terrible levels of competence of the people we elected, in fact, the people who we allowed to offer themselves, and many of us, including Jared here, stayed away, perhaps thinking that that's not the kind of place we want to serve.
Yes.
I think we made a terrible mistake. We ought to acknowledge that. And better people ought to prepare themselves and offer themselves to be elected to run county governments, because they are very important institutions.
2017.
2017, yeah. So let us not, I would just say that let us not sacrifice the system we're trying to build because certain people there are making mistakes. To me, the system is a beautiful experiment. We should continue to build the system. We should learn lessons from what we allowed to happen and ensure that, please, it does not happen again. Those people right now in counties, running counties, it's a terrible mistake for the country.
It's a terrible mistake, and as you're rightfully putting it, it's a beautiful idea, but we seem to be making very expensive mistakes. Yeah. Already there was a meeting between the deputy president and the governors, and there was talk about increasing money now into the counties. In fact, if I may recall, was it last week or the previous, the week before the previous, Henry Rotich was making projections about the next budget, which is expected to be around 1.8 trillion, with counties being the biggest beneficiaries.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, we had a World Bank report, and some of the percentages that is going into recurrent expenditure are quite huge. Cost is a very big victim of that. And now, as if that is not enough, we give them
more
money.
CDF. What are we telling Kenyans here?
Mr. Njoroge,
Yes.
certain things I would want to put into perspective. When the former Okello Member of Parliament, Muruki Karwe, brought this kind of legislation in Parliament in the year 2003, it was from a history. We had had a regime, Kanu regime, that perpetuated segregation. Certain areas that could not sing Baba na Mama properly were not getting any funding or were not being considered for any project. And when then NAC government came into force, Muruki Kagwe, who is now the Nyandarua senator, thought it wise to bring something that irrespective of which political divide or persuasion you are in, your area would still get its requisite a portion of the national funds. And that is what they did in 2003. Now, a new constitution came into force in the year 2010 that primarily put a lot of emphasis on devolution. An entire chapter, chapter 11 of the constitution, has been dedicated for devolution. Now, members of parliament played a key role even when the new constitution was being drafted, of course, through the stewardship of the committee of experts. They forgot to have that appear in legislation. Okay? There was the issue of devolution that talked about devolving funds to the counties and the funds run by the national government. But out of ignorance, they forgot to align CDF within the constitution. Now they came to 2013 after the elections and came up with another CDF Act 2013 to allow the CDF Act 2003-2007 to still continue, even though against the constitution. What the three judges did, David Majanja, Mumbi Ngugi, and Isaac Linaola, were just to come up with a very fair constitutional interpretation. That yes, a petition has been made on the legality of the CDF funds, but it is not in line with the constitution. And therefore, it was declared unconstitutional. Now, the mistake that these judges did, and I think somebody will take up this matter and present it to the Court of Appeal. Once a decision has been found unconstitutional or an issue that was prayed for in court has been declared unconstitutional, it stops at that. They ought to have downed their tools, put necessary caveats, and let nature take its own course. You cannot find me with a gun. I'm a robber on the streets of Nairobi. And you have acquired my gun. But you're telling me, because this gun, you're using it properly to feed your family, I want to give it to you for 12 more months. And that is the court of law speaking. After 12 months, if we find you with this gun, you will have to pay for it. And then the court is telling me that you know you can still keep that gun, but make sure that you get a license for it. It is unconstitutional. They ought to have said the money spending in CDF coffers must be taken either to the county government or taken back to the consolidated funds. It was a terrible mistake that a court of law can allow perpetuation of unconstitutionality to continue for 12 months. That was a mistake.
Another 1 year.
Another 1 year. And coming back to the infrastructure within the counties, they already have huge problems handling the county money. And now you want to add them 2.5% more. In essence, you're talking of 17.5% from the national kitty deep down to the counties. I mean, you are opening a Pandora's box towards corruption and ineptitude in discharge of services. It's going to be a huge problem. Right. And that must be addressed now. As my brother has put it, I think we need people of integrity, we need qualified people, and we need a transparent people to take over leadership. And they're out there, and there's so many. But politics is so dirty, and it has been made to be so, that those who are upright, straight, cannot get into those offices. Because even the processes that you undergo in order to be elected into office are so dirty, are so corrupt, are so, there is no accountability in the entire process.
They are so open.
They will kill you.
Anyway, exactly.
And they malign you. They will call you all sorts of names. So by our own culture that we have adopted, we were not born bad people, we have adopted such a culture, has also prevented good leaders from coming into the scene. And that is where the problem lies.
And talking about leadership also, because I can see Simekha wants to chip in on something, but also talking about leadership and the quality of services that Kenyans are receiving, will tie in what you want to say with something else that has been happening. People have been eating chicken. Allegedly, people have been eating chicken. Yes. And there was a time CORD leader Raila Odinga said, okay, fine, you feasted on the chicken, time has come, you need to go to beans. But
in jail.
You need to go and feast on beans. But honestly, now we've had, of course, Davis Chirchir, Isaac Hassan, I beg your pardon, last week we saw them go, and also Paul Wasanga. They went to Integrity Center and they said it wasn't
is going today.
Oswago is going today. And of course, a guy I feel holds a key to this whole thing. Trevi Oyombra, yes. He's called, and how exactly he managed to transfer the funds now from his account to the accounts of Chirchir and the rest. What do you think is the fate of that particular fiasco?
That's saga, yes. I think let me just a quick comment on what my brother here said about the court. I think I would give the High Court benefit of doubt with the knowledge that courts courts make decisions that take cognizance of what happens in society. They take notice of what is happening in society. So yes, whereas the clinical way would have been to say this is unconstitutional, therefore stop there, I think they recognize the fact that already there are legal commitments and many other commitments are arising from the CDF fund, that they would not want to create a mess if they say we are stopping this and there are people who have been given contracts legally or otherwise, but at least they are legally binding and so on. So they take cognizance of that and say, okay, look, we will give what we think is reasonable time, conclude any business that would make it messy if we were to stop this abruptly, and make sure by this time, and in this case they say 12 months, we have concluded. So I would give them benefit of doubt, given that concept of taking cognizance of what is happening in society. So they are not blind to what is happening in society. They take cognizance of that. Now back to the issue you raised, the issue of chicken. I think it opens up a huge Pandora's box. If you remember, if you followed Oraro's presentation at the Supreme Court, it was premised on a major part of it was premised on the fact that the procurement process of the IEBC was flawed ab initio. So therefore, it follows that anything else that depended on this procurement process, and that includes the presidential elections, is equally flawed. But to me, I saw that the court didn't seem to listen to you, but because he was very elaborate on this, he really gave a very succinct submission on the fact that the procurement process was flawed. But unfortunately, and that is water under the bridge anyway, I think he wasn't listened to. Now this case of chicken comes up. It takes us back to that. To me, it kind of opens up that. I begin by asking myself, was this case listened to by a competent court in the UK? Yes. In fact, a jurisdiction that Kenya borrows a lot from, a jurisdiction that we even look up to in terms of judiciary or judicial matters. Can we dismiss the fact that they found people guilty on the basis of the fact that these people are alleged to have bribed, well, no longer alleged because it was confirmed by the court, so in their case we can't say alleged, that they bribed people in Kenya, including IEBC officials and exams council officials? Yes, if a UK court has confirmed that, before the facts are overturned maybe by an appeals process, for now, we must believe there is something that needs to be investigated fairly on our end and also brought out to light. Because I don't think, honestly, a high court in the UK would be playing political games the way games are played here.
But that's a concern right there. There are people who are asking, wait a minute, why now when we are almost at the midpoint and IEBC now talking of diaspora registration and preparing for voter registration? There are people who are asking the question, why now? Number two, you will inform me, but I tend to wonder, is there a principle in law that would allow transfer of something? For example, what am I talking about? A court in the UK comes up with the findings that it did. Can we legally use that to transfer a case here and say, on basis of this, we can now do ABC?
Well, I want you to understand a few things. Firstly, is that there is no written constitution in the UK or in Britain. What is good, and what is bad will always remain to be bad. So you don't have to be taken through a document that tells you that if you drink from this cup, then you are a good man, or you should not drink from this cup. That is the principle that operates in the UK. Not just UK, I mean the Western countries. That is why African leaders are crying foul, that ICC is targeting Africans. Why? Because we don't have systems. Our systems don't work. Already somebody who is carrying out a private business, remember the Woods and Smith is a Smith business. It has nothing to do with the government. It's just people who are carrying out their legitimate business. And you may choose, in the course of your business, to attract customers by giving them some chicken so that you win a tender. And that happens here in Kenya all the time, and no one is taken to court.
People are served chicken.
All the time.
Chicken thighs, chicken wings.
A breast.
A breast too.
Also. So even though the UK has high moral standards to the effect that you cannot bribe somebody in order to win a tender, they have thrown the Smiths into jail. The son is serving 3 years, the father is serving 18 months because he's older, I think. But here in Kenya, it has been confirmed. This is a finding of fact that Kenyan officials were bribed by the Smiths in order that they could win the tender for whatever you call it, elections materials here in Kenya. And there is credible evidence. In the UK, they will not just jail you. There must be credible evidence. But the mere fact that that is in the public domain, under Article 6, Chapter 6 of our Constitution, leadership and integrity, all these people who are still wasting their time sitting comfortably in the aircon offices ought to have stepped aside and given a chance to investigative bodies to carry out a very thorough audit. They are sitting pretty in those offices, shielding evidence, and are telling us that, what happens in the UK does not happen here. We are not saying they have to be replicated, but a finding of fact has been made in the UK, and people are being taken to jail for a crime that out of complicity. I mean, they didn't just use that money by themselves. They used that money to bribe officials here, and that is they have records to that effect. And we are not saying that Isaac Hassan and company are guilty. We still cast aspersions on their conduct, and they still remain innocent until shall be proven otherwise. But the otherwise has already been proven from one wing in the UK. And those people are ready to cooperate with us, up to and including sending their findings to our Kenyan investigative authorities. They need to step aside like last year and wait for a thorough audit of what happened, so that if there is one who should take responsibility, this is the time. As my brother has said, this came up quite well during the Supreme Court hearing of the presidential election. And once a process is flawed, once the means is immoral, the end must be moral. And that is the principle upon which court put its case at the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court being what it is, they said the election was free and fair. Forget about electronic machines. But even so, electronic machines failed during presidential elections or during general elections of last year. But subsequently, we have held several by-elections. All of a sudden, even without a tender to repair them, they are all working. They worked in Homa Bay, they worked all over. So I think somebody must take responsibility. And that is just what is in the public domain, that 50 million shillings were wired to the account of Trevor Oyombra. That is what we know now from the report. What more hidden stuff are beneath IBC or IIEC as it was formerly known? A lot of things are at stake in this country. And if not properly addressed, we are headed back to the abyss of discord. But this is something you also need to know.
Right.
Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is a creation of the Constitution after promulgation. Of course, formerly it was Anti-Corruption Commission. To this day, we are yet to see a single person or a public officer taken to a court of law to answer to charges of impropriety. Yet every now and again, we read from newspapers about corruption allegations all over. But there's nothing.
They are investigating.
They are investigating. 6 years down the line, we are still investigating. Smiths were investigated for a very short period of time. The prosecutor moved to court, proved his case, and they are in jail. And then African countries will now turn back and say, the Western nations are targeting us with ICC. If we cannot even handle our own little stuff of taking Isaac Hassan to account, and we are talking about ICC and how ICC is not counterproductive to the African nations, we are lying.
What is the magnitude of this entire situation, owing to the fact that we are almost headed into an election in a very short time? In fact, already the order is out. People have been campaigning sort of chini ya maji, but still they are making statements here and there. Yeah. What do you think allegations of this magnitude mean, one, to where we're headed as a nation towards election, and does it present a nightmare to the political and ruling class of this country in terms of its management and outcome? Simekha.
I think it's a very critical question you ask, and before I respond to it, there's an earlier question you had asked about judicial processes, whether there's any kind of complementarity.
Principle of replication.
Between the UK and here.
Yes.
Just a quick one. I think the concept of mutual legal assistance, and I think Kenya has signed that with the UK. I think at least I've heard that they can request the UK authorities to hand over any material that is relevant, that has evidential relevance to this case, and they can use it in this country legitimately, legally. So that is possible, that the facts that have been confirmed by the court of law in the UK can be used in this country in a case. Now, to the question you ask, I think is a critical question, because issues were raised about the integrity of the election process, which is what led to the dispute that was adjudicated on by the Supreme Court at the presidential election level. And it was that the managers of the process were not honest, did not have integrity, or so it was alleged. Now, by association, it is being suggested that, in fact, these allegations had a very good basis, at least by association with what we've seen in the UK. Elections are coming. The same managers, except for one who is out, but the same managers. In fact, the premier of them, who is the chairman, is still in office. These allegations are about him, and he says, I won't leave, I won't resign. Even by the fact, the public perception just public perception, that if there are reasons to believe that you may have committed a certain serious offense, that we ought to go through a process to either confirm those allegations or we confirm your innocence. And if you confirm your innocence, then you continue. But when we insist that these people just continue in office, elections are not too far away. We know how long a judicial processes take.
Exactly.
We will get to those elections. This thing will not have been resolved. We've never, as far as I know, we've never had an objective evaluation of the performance of IEBC in the past elections. They did their own internal self-evaluation. As far as I know, they never made this public. We will have a problem.
Central Bank Act, just to chip in.
Right.
Central Bank Act would always require that if you get any funding from outside to the tune of $10,000 and above,
right,
that has to be declared. That is just 900,000 shillings. Has to be declared. And they have to know where that money is going to and its intended purposes. 50 million was received from the UK. I think that day probably Central Bank was asleep, so they did not order for its declaration. But most importantly, after $10,000, even after you declare, Central Bank would still flag NSIS so that they also trace the usage of this money. 50 million came here, and it came into Kenya, and Central Bank obviously was aware, but they're still asking UK to bring them any evidence if they have, as if that money went to Uganda. It came here, Oyombra is here, all the commissioners are here. What are they waiting for?
Well, we shall have to wait to hear what Oyombra has to say. Today, he's facing EACC. We're hoping he will clear the air, probably tell us how he transferred the money from his account to this. Because probably we're even pursuing the wrong people here. It could be that we are pursuing the wrong people. So probably Oyombra will set the record straight. We are we're remaining with around 3 minutes, but there's an issue I'd like us to look into. The last time the two of you were here, Homa Bay was happening. Kajiado is still happening. It's work in progress. Now we have Senator Moses Kajwang in Homa Bay. And recently, we had the court leader now instructing John Badi to crack the whip on rebels in an attempt to revamp the ODM party and COD in general. What do you have to say about that, Jared?
Well, I heard that also. Homa Bay is gone. Moses Kajwang has been elected. He was sworn in last week. I can only congratulate him. The elections in Homa Bay were so intense. The campaigns were laced with lots of propaganda, where certain candidates were bandaged and branded Jubilee molds and representing Jubilee interest, which was a total lie. Of course, you know the former Prime Minister took a lot of time campaigning in Homa Bay, and that is very unusual of him on any election in Luo Nyanza. So that tells you the stakes are high and the tides are changing. Yes, Mbadi has been told to crack the whip on those who are perceived to be aligned to other candidates, and notably Rangwe MP, Jojo Nair, Karachonyo MP, James Rege, Mbita MP, not Mbita, but Ndewa MP, Agustin Neto. And they're saying they should be fired from the party. The Constitution gives you a latitude on freedom of association. And once you declare that you have decamped your political party, then that gives the registered political parties an opportunity to crack the whip on you, not Mbadi. Mbadi can only write a letter of recommendation to the registered political parties. It does not stop at the political party. But this is also important for you to know. Just a while back, UDF leader, Musale Mudavadi, he's a UDF leader on paper, because I hear he's actually not. Cracked the whip on Boni Halwale, the Kakamega senator, and a few other two people to kick them out of the party.
Right.
It has become so difficult that Boni Halwale is still the senator under the same political party. What I'm essentially saying is that it is very difficult to even expel somebody from a political party, because you really have to prove, and as you don't have the personometer to gauge that this guy is more passionate about our political party than the other party. So it is a very, very, and ODM knows this very well, that is an exercise in futility. You are here with me, This is 2015, it will be 2016, Reggae will still be the MP, and all the rest. They are going nowhere. Kajiado Central is coming, and that will be a battle finale. But from the look of things, JAP is going with that thing.
Thank you for mentioning Kajiado Central. 'Cause yes.
Just a quick one on Homa Bay. I think the number of MPs who went against the party decision is too high, or those are too many MPs to be doing that for nothing. I just think there must have been something. Just when I look at the number of MPs, there must have been some legitimate grievance they had for them to openly do that, and especially against a decision that has Raila's backing. So I think the party needs to learn from that, not even though it says that it will crack whip, but learn from that. What mistake did it make? How can it correct that mistake? For it to be able to galvanize party support to go into the campaign in Kajiado. Even in Kajiado, I mean, I don't know, but you know, they have a candidate who was in a different party on a Sunday, up to Monday actually, and on Tuesday he became their candidate.
Exactly. Memusi?
Yes, Memusi.
Yes. But we've got to cut it short at that point. We're pressed for time. Thank you so much for your company and your time. We continue this discussion probably later in the week. My name is Samuel Njoroge. God bless you all.